So as another year comes to a close, it's that time again. It's time to cast your votes in the annual Hatman Strikes Back Boxing Awards. There's 12 categories this year, 5 nominees per category. And as always, some people are going to complain that there are certain nominees who shouldn't be in the list. There are other people who are going to complain that there are certain people who should have been nominated for certain categories but weren't. Hey, you can't please everybody all the time. And at the end of the day, YouTube only allow for 5 nominees per category in their polling system. Ideally, I would like to have 10, at least 10 nominees per category. But YouTube don't allow for that. So we have to deal with what we have to deal with. But at the end of the day, it's just a bit of fun for my subscribers on my channel. It gets conversations going. So let's get into it anyway. First category, Pundit of the Year. The nominees are Prince Nassim, Paulie Malignaggi, Teddy Atlas, Andre Ward, and Sergio Mora. Now, why did I put these particular 5 nominees here rather than other people? Well, I have been taking suggestions and I've done a few polls on or in my Facebook boxing group, Hatman Boxing, over the past few weeks for some of the categories. So I am taking some influence from my subscribers when it comes to picking nominees. But with this particular category, it was really my own personal choice of nominees rather than listening to what the public was saying on a particular vote. But what I can say is, generally speaking, Paulie Malignaggi is very highly regarded with the boxing public, particularly in the UK, because he does a lot of pundit work in the UK. So Paulie Malignaggi, very highly regarded. He had to be on the list. I felt like Prince Nassim had to be on the list just for the jokes because, you know, he said some pretty entertaining things this year, especially around the Eubank Groves fight. So I felt like he should be on there for a bit of comic relief. Teddy Atlas, always a very controversial, divisive, and compelling figure. So he's got to be on there. Andre Ward as a commentator, I think, is top notch, and as an analyst in terms of the stuff that he picks up. And you can see where the votes are at so far in terms of who's in the lead. Paulie Malignaggi way out in front, and barring a miracle, he looks like he's going to win it. Sergio Mora, I think, is underrated as a commentator. I think he's been doing a very good job on DAZN. And as I say, Andre Ward, top notch. Next category, Interviewer of the Year 2018. Now, this is a very interesting category for me. You've got Kugan Cassius out front, and he'll probably win it. But we'll see. Maybe after you guys watch this video, those of you who haven't voted could cast your votes. All you need to do is go to my channel page, go to the community tab, and you'll be able to cast your votes on the community tab. So, Interviewer of the Year, Kugan Cassius out in front with 56% at the moment. Rob Tebbett in second place. Now, I've long been a fan of Kugan Cassius's work. I think that Kugan, and I'm being very serious when I say this, has revolutionized the world of boxing interviewing. Oh, yes, he has. And some people might find that a bit strong. Listen, I'm not saying Kugan is the first person to ever interview in his particular style in media, you know, in the whole of media history. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying in recent times, in modern times, when it comes to YouTube boxing interviewing, Kugan Cassius has been a trailblazer. He introduced a very different style of interviewing, which was far more informal, where he was able to get fighters to open up. He was able to strike up a rapport and get the fighters to show a side of themselves that the public don't normally see. That's what Kugan Cassius has done fantastically well and continues to do fantastically well throughout his career as an interviewer. So, you know, I can't speak of Kugan Cassius highly enough in terms of what he's done for the world of boxing interviewing. I think he's a fantastic, fantastic interviewer. Having said that, you've had the emergence of Rob Tebbett this year. Now, Rob Tebbett, I believe, has been around interviewing for a while, but on Boxing Social, he's really been the head honcho of Boxing Social. I don't know if he's the proprietor of that channel, but he's come to the forefront more as a boxing interviewer in the UK and overseas. He's been flying overseas too, Rob Tebbett. And for me, personally, he has catapulted himself to the front of the line when it comes to boxing interviewers. That's my personal view this year. I think Rob Tebbett is the man when it comes to boxing interviewing at the moment. He has the informal, witty, bantery kind of demeanor that, Coogan was a trailblazer in. But Rob also is very concise. He's maybe not as meandering as Coogan tends to be sometimes. He's more concise. He's more precise. And he's just, very intelligent, asks great questions, never afraid to ask the difficult questions, and he just has a generally very bright and engaging personality for a boxing interviewer. So I personally would pick Rob Tebbett as the boxing interviewer of the year 2018, but that's my personal view, and I'm going to stop giving my personal views for the rest of this video in terms of who I think should be the number one in each category. I'll do that in the results video. But yeah, Rob Tebbett has done fantastically well. Radio Raheem, of course, he did have a little hiatus where I didn't see him interviewing on Seconds Out for a little bit, but he's back now. And Radio Raheem, a lot of people like him. Nesta Gibbs is a very, very divisive figure. A lot of people like Nesta Gibbs. A lot of people hate Nesta Gibbs. Me personally, I think he is a very good interviewer. People accuse him of being confrontational. People accuse him of being biased. But he has a particular style, which I think a lot of people don't really understand. And it is a style which is kind of more, back in the days, anybody who was a hip hop fan back in the days, back in the 1990s, there was a hip hop DJ called K Slay. All right. He used to call himself the Mixtape King. And K Slay had a very confrontational style with his interview subjects. Okay. And that's kind of the school of interviewing. I don't know whether he directly comes out of that, but that's the school of interviewing that a lot of Americans within hip hop culture come out of, where it's all very confrontational and what have you. Nesta Gibbs is in that kind of mold, right? Confrontational, but I don't think he gets enough credit for, I'm not saying he's completely impartial every single time, but I don't think he's as biased as a lot of people make him out to be, Nesta Gibbs. Because you might see him in some interviews where he's speaking to Eddie Hearn and he's really putting the pressure on Hearn, and some people feel like he's being confrontational and he's being really harsh on Anthony Joshua. But then you see other interviews where he's interviewing somebody from the other side and they're really trying to go in on Joshua and Hearn, and Nesta Gibbs is like, whoa, but he's done fantastically well. And Joshua's got all these belts and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of people get the wrong end of the stick. They get it twisted when they see how confrontational he is, and they automatically assume, well, he hates this person because he's being so confrontational, but that's really just his style. So personally, I think Nesta Gibbs has done a lot of fantastic interviews this year and also historically. How many people can forget the infamous Angel Garcia interview? Yeah, I love the strippers. Yeah, how many people can forget that? That was a YouTube boxing interview classic. That was Nesta Gibbs who did that interview. So I think he's done very good work over even this year, it wasn't an interview per se, but he was present when the altercation between Billy Joe Saunders and Deontay Wilder and his team happened in Nando's in Ireland, So yeah, I think Nesta Gibbs has done good work, and that's why I put him up as a nominee for this particular award. And the dark horse of the pack down here, Marcus Villegas. Now, I think Marcus Villegas is one of the most underrated boxing interviewers on YouTube and in the game in general. If you prefer your interviewers to be professional, but have a very relaxed and engaging interview style, where they're relatively formal, because Marcus Viegas is a relatively formal interviewer. And you see, this is one of the things which I always had an issue with when it came to boxing interviewers, and why, for me, Kugan Cassius was such a breath of fresh air, because Kugan brought this informal style in to boxing interviewing, whereas before it was all very boring and monotone and stuffy. That's how most of the interviewers were, whereas Kugan was like a breath of fresh air. Rob Tebbert, again, the way he constructs his interviews is a lot more formal than Kugan Cassius, but he still has that informal banter, and he's very quick-witted and all that kind of business. Marcus Viegas, in contrast to those two, he is more formal, but he's not formal in a stuffy way. Marcus Viegas has a very, smooth way of talking, very smooth style, comes across as a really humble and respectful character, but he still asks good questions. He gets good interviews, and his channel, Fight Hub TV, is one of my go-to channels when it comes to boxing interviews. And by the way, Fight Hub TV has excellent video quality. That's one of the things I like about Fight Hub TV. They use very good cameras, very good image settings when they shoot their video. That's one of the things I like about Fight Hub TV, as well as Marcus Viegas' interviewing skills. And to be fair, Seconds Out also had very good video quality a lot of the times too. So yeah, definitely check out Marcus Viegas, a dark horse of the pack. Check him out. All right, next category, Most Improved Fighter of the Year 2018. Now, I think the nominees are fairly self-explanatory here. Rob Brandt pulled off a big upset in Japan against Murata, and that was after getting really beaten out of sight by Jürgen Bremer not too long prior to that. So that's a very good, improvement for Rob Brandt, really being a dark horse of the middleweight division. And it's not like Murata was seen as one of the elite guys, but he was a very good amateur, obviously, and he had a big following in Japan. So for Rob Brandt to pull off what he did, it takes some improvement, So hats off to him. He's definitely one of the most improved fighters of the year. As far as I'm concerned, Tony Harrison, again, he just beat Jamel Charlo. Callum Smith. Now, some people might be scratching their heads at why I included Callum Smith, because it's not like he was crap before and all of a sudden he's turned good. But that's really not what Most Improved is about. It's about who improves the most. It doesn't mean they were crap to begin with. It just means they've shown a marked improvement. Callum Smith, if you think about it, when he fought Holskin, all right, that kickboxer, and when he fought Skoglund, people weren't impressed by those performances. He struggled in those fights. So to come back from those performances in the World Boxing Super Series and defeat George Groves, destroy George Groves in the way that he did, you have to say that that's a big improvement. So Callum Smith has to be on the list for me. Tony Harrison, as I say, Rob Brandt. But the two front runners when it comes to Most Improved Fighter of the Year 2018 are obviously Josh Warrington and Dylan White. Look, Josh Warrington has done so well this year. I did not think that he would beat Lee Selby. He proved me wrong. But despite proving me wrong once, I went ahead and underestimated him again. I didn't think he'd beat Carl Frampton. I thought Carl Frampton was a level or two above. Proved me wrong again. I mean, this is a guy who only has about 5 or 6 KOs on his record, and he's getting in there and he's hurting elite level guys now. Maybe not knocking them out, but he's certainly hurting them. Carl Frampton admitted he was hurt several times by Josh Warrington. So you got to take your hat off to him. For me, he has improved massively, and I think he needs to be getting a lot more votes. I think this vote, really, in my opinion, should be a lot closer between Warrington and the front runner at the moment, Dylan White. Dylan White, I mean, one of the reasons that I didn't include certain people in certain categories is because sometimes when a fight is fresh, when it happened the other week, it makes more, the impact of it is still resonating in your mind. Whereas something that happened in January or February, even though it might have been a greater achievement or a more shocking upset or a better KO, because it was so long ago, it's not really resonating in your mind as much. Do you understand? And so with Dylan White, he just knocked out Derek Chisora, 1-punch KO, fantastic knockout. And when you take his year overall in context, you'd have to say, yes, he's definitely one of the most improved fighters of the year, 100%. But he was behind in that fight against Derek Chisora. You know, you do have to bear that in mind. So again, Dillian Whyte is definitely up there. That's why I put him in there as a nominee for this category. But I do feel like, you know, maybe people are shortchanging Josh Warren a little bit in terms of how much he's improved. Yes, he hasn't scored the knockouts that Dillian Whyte has, and he hasn't been, you know, dropping people left, right, and center like Dillian Whyte. Fair enough. But was Josh Warrington versus Lee Selby close? Was Josh Warrington versus Carl Frampton close? You know, rhetorical question. But anyway, those are the 5 nominees for Most Improved Fighter of the Year 2018. Prospect of the Year 2018. The nominees are Shakur Stevenson, Josh Kelly, Ife Ajagba, Joe Joyce, and Joshua Buatsi, who right now is the front runner. Now, Ife Ajagba, very interesting heavyweight prospect, ridiculously long reach. He's a Nigerian based in the United States. I believe he had a good amateur, pretty good amateur background. A very, very interesting prospect to watch, a tremendous puncher. And he's so feared by journeyman at this point. He's, you know, prospect, so he's still fighting journeyman, but he's so feared by journeyman at this point, he even had a journeyman walk out of the ring before the opening bell, if you remember. So Ife Ajagba definitely one to watch. Joe Joyce, they're moving him as fast as they can. He obviously had a lot of experience as an amateur and also in the World Series of Boxing. He's only had a handful of fights so far as a pro, and he's making noise. He's calling out big names, and, you know, he hasn't even had 10 fights yet. So I think Joe Joyce is doing very well at the moment. It definitely deserves to be a nominee. And of course, Joshua Buatsi, he is what people want in a prospect because he's not really mouthing off. He's not really brash and bold. He's just all business. He's going in there. He's smashing people to pieces and under a round. He's got a rival in Anthony Yard who was telling people, well, my rivals should fight the people that I fought. And then we'll see if they can do as good a job. Well, Joshua Buatsi went ahead and did that, and he smashed, was it Tony Avalon to pieces in a round, a guy who'd taken Anthony Yard about 7 rounds. So Buatsi is delivering for the fans what they want in a prospect. They want someone who is all business, who just looks like a force of nature. Particularly in the UK, they like guys like that. They like guys who don't necessarily mouth off all the time when they haven't yet proven themselves at a certain level. They just like a guy who's going to get his head down, take care of the business in that boxing ring, and intimidate the competition and intimidate his rivals. That's what they like to see. They like to see a guy who's ambitious and hungry and a guy who wants to take on his domestic rivals. And again, Joshua Buatsi ticks that box. So for obvious reasons, that's why Buatsi's there. Josh Kelly, I know he had to pull out of a fight recently. That's not the end of the world. Still a very good prospect, still fantastically athletically gifted. Shakur Stevenson is making nice progress too. I know people still talk to me about the video I did about him when he lost that fight in the Olympics. But, you know, it is what it is. Shakur Stevenson's career is progressing, as I say, nicely. And we'll see what he can do as a professional as he matures into an adult, emotionally, mentally, and physically. You know, he's definitely one to watch. So, yeah, keep an eye on Shakur Stevenson too. So those are the nominees for Prospect of the Year 2018. Get voting. Those of you guys who haven't voted yet. All right, now here is a category which I included last year, Troll of the Year. You know, a bit of fun because boxing is about entertainment in and out of the ring. And when it comes to out of the ring, some fighters entertain more so than others. Now, it is subjective because, for example, Amir Khan, a lot of people just can't stand him. They hate his guts. He just annoys the hell out of them. But then there's other people like me who appreciate Amir Khan's trolling. Amir Khan has been trolling Anthony Joshua on the sly. He's been trolling Kell Brook, obviously. Several years he was trolling Carl Froch, or going back and forth with Carl Froch at least. Well, him and Carl Froch were trolling each other, really. So yeah, Amir Khan, in light of the recent comments he made about Kell Brook, has taken his troll game to a new level. And of course, Khan always appears in the papers in these scandals and what have you. And the way he brushes these things off, and in fact, the fact that Khan is involved in all these scandals back to back to back to back, it feels like he's trolling the world. Do you understand what I'm saying? It feels like living the life that he lives is just a way of trolling the whole world. And then, of course, the comments he recently made about Kell Brook took his trolling to a new level. So that's why Khan's on there. Jarrell Miller, he talks smack. I particularly like the smack talk about Anthony Joshua, you know, calling him Barbie doll. And what's the other thing he says? He's calling it Anthony Joshua a centerfold model. G-string poses and all that kind of business. I find that funny. Jarrell Miller trolling Anthony Joshua. I find it entertaining. The stuff about Joshua's mom, I thought that was too far. I thought that was mad disrespectful. And particularly, you know, in the playground, people used to drop mom jokes. And if you're a group of friends, you know, sometimes people as groups of friends drop mom jokes. But when you're talking about grown men who don't know each other and you start talking about someone's mom, I mean, to say those are fighting words, that's an understatement. Those are the kind of words that could lead to, you know, a very, very serious situation indeed when you start talking about people's mums and you don't even know them. You understand what I'm saying? So, and because this is a world where you're dealing with fighters. This is not a world where you're dealing with internet trolls. You know, people can send out mum jokes and start cussing people's mums on the internet, on YouTube, right? But when you're in the same vicinity as somebody and you're both fighters and you start talking about the other person's mum, like, that's quite deep. So I don't rate Jarrell Miller for saying that. But all the other stuff I found amusing. Billy Joe Saunders, well, you know, he's just on a mission to troll opponents, troll crackheads. I mean, troll all kinds of people, right? So Billy Joe Saunders there for obvious reasons. Frank Warren, he had to be up there, as far as I'm concerned, as one of the nominees for Troll of the Year because he talks so much rubbish, this man. And he knows he's talking rubbish. He knows he's spinning a yarn. So he had to be there as far as I'm concerned. He really does try and push it. And you know what? One of the biggest trolls of the year was when Frank Warren and BT Sport put up the money for Deontay Wilder to fight Anthony Joshua. Or when they had basically planned to put up the money so they could have Wilder versus Joshua on BT Sport with Frank Warren, behind the scenes promoting it? I mean, you know, if that's not a troll, I don't know what is. So nice try there by Frank Warren. And of course, Chris Eubanks Sr. and Jr., they've kind of fallen by the wayside as trolls, but whenever they are in the limelight and in the spotlight, they're still strong. Their troll game is still strong. Eubank Jr. trolled his opponent. I forget the guy's name, who he fought on the undercard of Groves versus Smith. He trolled that guy after the fight was done, you know. And Eubank Sr. recently was spotted, or maybe filmed himself, in the United States as a member of a police department of some state in America, wearing a Dickie bow tie and strutting around. So their troll game is still strong. But given the fact that Eubank Jr. took a hard L against George Groves, it's kind of sidelined the pair of them for a little bit. But hopefully they'll be back in 2019 and their troll game will be as strong as ever. We'll see. So those are the nominees for Troll of the Year 2018. Promoter of the Year 2018. Eddie Hearn out in front at the moment, massively with 81%. Frank Warren 9%, Bob Arum 2%, De La Hoya 2%, Al Heyman 7%. You know, Al Heyman, I put allegedly because Al Heyman is officially not a promoter, but unofficially most people class him as a promoter. So that's why I put him there. I think that, you know, again, my personal view, I'm not saying Oscar De La Hoya should win this year. I'll tell you who I think, in my view, was the promoter of the year in the results video. But I think Oscar De La Hoya should get more votes than this. I know people hate De La Hoya, but he has done a good job with Canelo, hasn't he? In terms of promoting Canelo events. And look, Canelo events might not have the deepest undercards and all that kind of stuff, but in terms of putting on events where the atmosphere is crazy and all this kind of business, yes, you have to credit Canelo for a lot of that because he's the fighter that he is. You have to credit his trainer, etc. But De La Hoya knows how to promote the events. You understand? He knows how to do it. So I think he does deserve a bit more credit than 2%. I mean, even Canelo against Rocky Fielding, the atmosphere at MSG was fantastic. So De La Hoya has to get some credit for it at least, right? Even if he don't win Promoter of the Year, he has to get some credit. I know people don't like De La Hoya because they think he's corrupt and they accuse him of being, a cokehead and an alcoholic and just a deviant in general. That's all good. You can't tell me there's nothing Oscar De La Hoya is good at. Yeah? You can't tell me there's nothing he's good at. He might be all those things you accuse him of being, but that don't mean he's not good at something. So, yeah, it is what it is. Oscar De La Hoya. And that really means Golden Boy as a company, not just De La Hoya. I should have really put Golden Boy. Then again, I would have had to included the company names of all these promoters here. But Golden Boy as a company, I think they're a pretty good promotional company overall. And I think they've done a pretty good job in 2018. All right, next category is Upset of the Year. Now, it hasn't been the biggest year for upsets this year, let's be real. There were much bigger upsets, I think, in 2017. But there has been some. Alvarez versus Kovalev was an upset. Again, it wasn't as big as it would have been a couple of years prior because Kovalev had already lost to Andre Ward a couple of times. But still, the nature of the upset was pretty shocking, the way Kovalev capitulated and was knocked out properly. There was no controversy surrounding this upset. So Alvarez versus Kovalev, 33% at the moment. Brandt versus Murata, only 2%. I think that's because not a lot of people know Murata outside of Japan. So if that had happened in the UK or the United States to a British or American fighter of a similar level to Murata, I think it would have been, a lot more people would have voted for that particular fight as upset of the year. Warrington versus Selby, that's a fight that definitely surprised me. In terms of the outcome, I fully expected Selby to win. Harrison versus Charlo is out in front with 37% at the moment. Again, that's fresh in the minds for a lot of people, okay? Was Charlo really on the level of a Kovalev in terms of how formidable he was as a champion? I'll let you guys decide, but to me, Charlo wasn't on the level of a Kovalev in terms of how formidable people saw him as and how proven he was at a higher level. Charlo definitely making waves, definitely doing his thing, but he hasn't hit his peak yet. That's the point I'm making. So when Harrison beat him, and the manner of the victory as well, where Harrison beat him, it was a very dull fight. It was a very boring affair, a chess match, nip and tuck rounds. It wasn't like one guy got beaten up or anything. There was nothing really dramatic about it. And it could have gone the other way. It was one of them fights where, yeah, you can see how Harrison won, but you could also say, I could see how Charlo could have nicked it. So, yeah, it was an upset and a relatively big upset, but it didn't really have much impact on me because of the nature of the upset, But that's just me. Maybe you guys disagree, and that's okay. Alvarez versus Kovalev, Harrison Charlo, and of course, you got Rocky Fielding versus Zoiga. Next category, comeback of the year. Well, there's no real competition here, is there? There's Tyson Fury with 96%. Manny Pacquiao hasn't even got one vote. He did win a world title again this year. He beat Lucas Matisse. Nonito Donaire, 2%. Obviously, because of the Ryan Burnett situation. Tony Harrison, 1%. Rob Brandt, 0%. So it's all about Tyson Fury, comeback of the year. And yeah. Next category, trainer of the year. Now, again, as I was talking about earlier, because certain fighters have got a big following, a very passionate following, and in some instances, a very fanatical following, and because the fight happened earlier on this month, you've got Ben Davison out in front at the moment for trainer of the year. Now, I included Ben Davison, and by the way, I have to apologize for slightly misspelling Davison's name. There is a D at the end of the, between the I and the S, there's supposed to be a D, so it's Davidson, the way it's spelt. So apologies for that. But Ben Davison did fantastically well. You have to give him credit for quarterbacking the comeback of Tyson Fury. Yeah? Very well. You have to, give him a lot of credit. Young trainer. He definitely deserves to be among the nominees. But to be out in front as much as he is, 45%, The next nominee is 30%. Has Ben Davison done as much this year? Has he proven himself? Has he proven to be as good as the other trainers on the list? For example, Anatoly Lomachenko is not only the trainer of his son Vasyl Lomachenko, he's also the trainer of Alexander Usyk. Are we saying that Ben Davison has done better than Anatoly Lomachenko? Think about how high level the fighters that Anatoly Lomachenko trains are. Think about what they can do in the ring, how skilled they are. Think about what they've done, who they've beat. Can we say that Ben Davison, for the draw against Deontay Wilder in the 2 fights against Pianeta and Sefer Safiri, deserves to be trainer of the year ahead of Lomachenko? I'm asking the question, okay? He deserves to be among the nominees. That's why I put him there. But does he deserve to be ahead of this guy? Does he deserve to be ahead of Eddie Reynoso, the trainer of Canelo Alvarez, given the tactics that Alvarez used in the rematch with Golovkin? He flipped the script. How many of you expected Canelo to come out and push Golovkin back for 12 rounds and give Golovkin the Mexican-style fight that he'd been looking for, he'd been asking for? How many of you expected that? And how many of you expected Canelo to be as successful using that style, pushing Golovkin back as he was? You have to give Reynoso a hell of a lot of credit for coming up with those tactics and deciding to fight Golovkin that way. You know? So I think some people are being underestimated here. Obviously, Shingo Inoue, the trainer of the new kid on the block out of Japan, who's destroying people in the World Boxing Super Series. Mark Tibbs has overseen the improvements and been the architect of the improvements made to heavyweight contender Dillian Whyte. So you got to give Mark Tibbs a lot of credit. So yeah, have a think about what I've said and cast your votes. Knockout of the year, 2018. Again, another case where this is the most recent knockout. So a lot of people are picking Whyte Chisora 2 as knockout of the year. And it's definitely up there. That's why I put it among the nominee categories. Sorry, among the nominees. I had to put Whyte Chisora 2 up there because it's a fantastic knockout. But what about Chisora Takam? You know, Whyte Chisora 2, it was against the run of play, but it wasn't totally against the run of play. It was a close fight. Chisora was up by a couple of points. But Chisora versus Takam, Chisora was really taking a beating. He was getting battered. That fight, that knockout really came out of the blue because it was totally against the run of play. Whereas Whyte Chisora 2 wasn't quite as against the run of play as Chisora Takam was. Usyk Bellew, that has to be up there because of the quality of the knockout. The way Usyk set that up, the way he broke Tony Bellew down, he took the best Bellew had to offer and he dished out far better. And it just capped off a fantastic year for Alexander Usyk. So that understandably has to be in there. Alvarez versus Kovalev, you know, it wasn't a one-punch knockout or anything, but it was a shocking knockout to a lot of people. You know, me personally, I felt like there was something like that coming, that Kovalev was going to get hurt. To me, he was looking vulnerable for a few rounds leading up to the KO. And the commentators felt the same. They felt like there was something coming. But still, the way that Alvarez was able to dispatch of his man without any controversy was very good indeed. And Inoue versus Payono, a fantastic first round knockout. Inoue, the beast, I believe they call him in Japan. So those are the nominees for knockout of the year. Now, fighter of the year. Again, I had to omit certain people because I feel like there are too many fanboys, too many fanatics who are not being objective when it comes to picking these nominees. All right. So many people wanted to pick, let's say, Tyson Fury as fighter of the year. Okay. Tyson Fury had 2 wins against Journeyman and then a draw in a world title fight. Now, that is a great comeback to come back from what he's come back from, but a draw in a world title fight where he was dropped twice and nearly knocked out, I can't say that's fighter of the year. When I'm looking at Fighter of the Year contenders. I'm looking at the people who have been on the top of their game, who have been dominating, who have been looking beastly. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking for a guy who did better than a lot of people expected. That's more comeback of the year. I'm looking for the guy who really dominated the competition where, nobody could touch them. And so Alexander Usyk, the obvious first nominee, right? Alexander Usyk, given the fact that he unified the cruiserweight division, undisputed cruiserweight champion, won the World Boxing Super Series, took out Tony Bellew. He obviously has to be the number one nominee. Canelo Alvarez beating Golovkin in the rematch, becoming a two-weight world champion. I know, Rocky Fielding, the weakest champion in the super middleweight division, but still, the Golovkin performance has to catapult Canelo Alvarez up there as a nominee for Fighter of the Year. The Golovkin performance. Inoue, obviously, he's been making waves, knocking people out. Vasyl Lomachenko, he's continuing his dominance. Alida Alvarez, a lot of people, 1% at the moment, but outside of my subscriber base, there are a lot of people who believe Alida Alvarez at least deserves to be in the conversation for Fighter of the Year, which is why I put him up there for his fantastic win over Sergey Kovalev. And Kovalev looked good, remember, in his comeback fight. He looked good in his couple of comeback fights, actually. But Alvarez was able to take him out. So he's a nominee. And the final category here is Fight of the Year. And again, I've omitted certain fights because I can only choose 5 nominees anyway. YouTube don't allow more than 5 nominees. I would have liked to have chosen more than 5. But there are certain fights that I omitted because the fanaticism of the fanboys doesn't allow them to see or think rationally, objectively, or clearly when it comes to Fight of the Year. People, it's the last time I want to speak about this year, and we're nearly at the end of this year, right? But there is no way that Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury is one of the top 5 fights of the year. It's just not. Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury really and truly had one good round, and that was the 12th. Was it the 9th round or the 10th round where Fury was also dropped? I think it was the 9th, wasn't it? That round wasn't even that great. I mean, Wilder landed a decent couple of shots on the side of, or top of Fury's head, dropped him. Fury wasn't particularly hurt, got up, lasted out the round. But other than those 2 rounds, you can't tell me it was a great fight. It wasn't. But because of the hype, because of the fanaticism of the Fury diehards, they would be voting in their thousands and thousands to make sure that Wilder versus Fury won Fight of the Year. And I'm sure there are going to be some Wilder fanboys who would also do the same thing. But let's be real, people. Any neutral observer, even Adam Booth recently. What does Adam Booth hate Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury? Adam Booth recently said the Wilder-Fury fight wasn't a great fight. It had a couple of dramatic rounds, but overall as a fight, it wasn't particularly entertaining. It wasn't a fight you'd want to watch more than once. That's what Adam Booth recently said in an interview. And I have to agree, all right? So that fight is definitely not up there. The ones which are there, Chisora Takam was a fantastic fight. White Parker, another fantastic fight. Both men on the floor. Very competitive. Canelo versus Golovkin 2. Very good fight. High level. This is boxing at the highest level. Canelo versus Golovkin 2. Where Canelo took the fight to Mr. Mexican style and showed him what Mexican style was really all about. So, that was a very, very good fight. Very high level. Stevenson versus Jack was a good fight. A lot of people like that. Usyk versus Breedis. I think a lot of people forget how good a fight that was. That was a really good fight. Usyk versus Breedis. Very high quality, very high level, loads of skill, loads of action. Good fight. Those are the nominees. And just going back to Fighter of the Year, again, there are some people who are going to scream and cry that Fury should be in the Fighter of the Year category. Please, he got a draw. All right, he got a draw. He was down twice. Close fight. If you wanted to put Fighter of the Year in here, for example, other than Inoue, you could argue several fighters should be in there who are not in there. I mean, if you want to play devil's advocate, you could say that Anthony Joshua deserves to be in there more than Inoue. Why? Because Anthony Joshua unified against Joseph Parker, and then he knocked out his mandatory, who'd only ever lost once before, in Alexander Povetkin. I mean, are the guys Inoue beat better than Joseph Parker pound for pound and Alexander Povetkin? Maybe they are, but what I'm saying is you could make an argument for several different people being in this list rather than these individuals, rather than Alvarez, rather than Inoue, for example. Those two in particular, you could argue that other people should be there instead. All right? But I'm looking for, the top of the top. Alvarez beat the person who, up until that time, was still regarded as, if not the number one light heavyweight, definitely, top three in Sergey Kovalev. Obviously, there was Beterbiev and there was, the emergence of Dmitry Bivol, but Kovalev was more proven than both of them. And so Alvarez came along and beat the most proven light heavyweight champion out there. So he hasn't cleaned out the division or anything close, but, he went in there and he knocked out one of the top three light heavyweights in the division. Tyson Fury certainly hasn't done that. With Alvarez's win over Kovalev, there was no ambiguity. Inoue, same thing, no ambiguity. Canelo Alvarez beating, it is what it is. Anyway, those are the 12 categories for, and again, Anthony Joshua wasn't nominated for one. I didn't put him up for any of the categories, didn't put Wilder up for any of the categories. So all the Fury fanboys, count yourself lucky, all right, that he's been nominated for the categories that he has. It is what it is. All right, so cast your votes if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in my next video and obviously in the results video. All right, it's Hatman, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.